While the 1987 film Predator, directed by John McTiernan, was initially critiqued as a straightforward action monster movie, over the years and through its subsequent sequels and literature, a lore has developed about the film and titular character. While many often note its resemblance to the epic poem Beowulf, the ambiguity of the title suggests that the role of Predator may not be as obvious as it appears, and the similarities of the two main characters may be closer than you think. I'm James, and in this episode, I'll be asking the question, who was the real Predator? From its early conception, the general consensus was that the term Predator referred to the main antagonist, the alien hunter. And throughout the years, the term and creature have become synonymous with each other. However, I believe that the title of the film was never intended to just solely be about the alien creature. From the beginning of Predator, the lines can be drawn immediately that its two main characters are on a similar path, and comparisons between the two become inherent. Predator opens with a spacecraft appearing out of nowhere. Next, what we assume to be the Predator is ejected out of the ship and is on a course to an unknown location on Earth. The scene then fades to black, and the following shot is of a helicopter approaching yet another unknown location. Notice how the spacecraft appears out of the darkness of space, and then immediately following, a helicopter appears out of the darkness as well, and are both on a path seemingly unknown to the audience. Following the scene where Dutch, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, is given his mission, we are introduced to his crew inside the chopper on its way to yet another undisclosed location. Inside, the chopper is lit with a red light, and all of Dutch's men, including Dutch, are bathed in a red glow. The color red is important here and later on in the film. The scene signifies that this is Dutch at his strongest. His team is intact, and the camaraderie indicates that they are overly confident in their efforts while also enjoying each other's company. After they disembark, the team then proceeds on foot through the jungle, all the time unknowingly being tracked by the Predator. Here is where the similarities become more profound and prominent. It's interesting to note that the Predator does not engage right away, as it is more than capable of taking out an entire team, as we find out shortly when Dutch and his men discover the remains of their fallen compatriot, Jim Hopper. It's discovered that these men were engaged in a firefight, firing in all directions with no apparent targets being hit. But more on that later. The Predator continues to track Dutch's men to their objective, recovering hostages from a guerrilla compound. The team commences to take down the guerrillas and escape with a prisoner, Anna. We can only assume that the Predator has been observing this entire time and resumes once the gunfighting has ceased. When he resumes tracking the team, it's with Anna now in the custody of Dylan as she attempts to flee him and Dylan strong-arming her. This is where the unclear nature of the title begins to shift. Dylan then runs into Mac, who tells him to turn around. When he does, he stabs a scorpion that was crawling on Dylan's back and stomps on it with his boot. Following, the Predator is then seen, from its own viewpoint, walking the wreckage of the now destroyed compound and seeing all the dead bodies lying on the ground. It then arrives at the crushed scorpion remains and picks it up. Now this is just a theory, but what if the Predator is watching all this chaos and destruction and is thinking, all this death and killing, and that wasn't enough, but they had to make sure that this feeble, insignificant creature was destroyed as well. And on top of that, now they have a woman hostage? I know it's a stretch, but it's something. After the destruction of the compound, the team began to move through the jungle. Soon, Tracker Billy begins to feel uneasy that there may be something out there watching them. While he and Dutch are trying to figure out what, Anna escapes. Hawkins chases her down and catches up to her. As she screams and fights to get away, the Predator attacks and kills Hawkins. Hawkins' death could be a direct result of the Predator's perception that he was attacking Anna. Following Hawkins' death, the team split up and search for his body. Blaine is then killed after he mistakes a small animal for an approaching enemy. The events surrounding Blaine's death have always fascinated me, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. When Blaine is found dead, Mac proceeds to fire aimlessly into the jungle. The rest of the crew arrive and begin firing as well. This scene was foreshadowed earlier with the discovery of Jim Hopper and his men. Billy says they were firing in all directions, much like Dutch's team is presently doing now. The scene also foreshadows coming events. One thing about the character of Blaine is that he is one of two main characters not seen through the Predator's thermal vision. This gives me reason to believe that Blaine's death was more out of necessity and survival than anything else. As the Predator heals from its wounds, the team decide to set a trap for him. Here's where Anna deduces that the creature is the same kind of creature that terrorized her village years ago. But that's another video for another time. The Predator springs the trap and the chase is on as Mac and Dylan pursue the Predator, while Dutch, Anna, Billy, and Poncho attempt to make it to the rendezvous. Mac is then killed by the Predator, as is Dylan shortly after. Mac and Dylan's death are a direct result of their prior actions at the compound, Dylan strong-arming Anna, and Mac's stomping of the insignificant Bug. I know this is really a stretch, but is it ironic that the same arm Dylan was using to push Anna is the same arm that was shot off? That's something. The Predator pursues the remaining survivors, and Billy is then killed as he attempts to hold him off so the others can get away. After Billy is disposed of, Poncho is killed next. Poncho is the other member of Dutch's team not to be seen in the thermal imaging, again signifying that their deaths came from necessity and survival than anything else. After all of Dutch's men have been killed, Dutch finds himself alone and soon realizes how to defeat the Predator. Dutch deduces that the mud can be used as camouflage to hide his body heat. After a brief encounter, Dutch disables the Predator's cloaking abilities, and now the roles have been reversed. Dutch is now invisible, stalking and hunting the Predator, which is now unable to hide. During the encounter, Dutch fires an explosive arrowhead at the Predator, prompting him to fire wildly into the trees, very much like Dutch's men firing randomly into the jungle, and the firefight put up by Jem Hopper and his men, and now Dutch is on the receiving end of this firefight. The scene ends with the Predator cornering Dutch, and after realizing he is a worthy opponent, strips his armor, weapons, and helmet off to face him in hand-to-hand combat. I've stated before in other videos the significance of the color red in Predator, and how it exhibits strength and weakness. Through Dutch's eyes, when his team is bathed in the red light in the helicopter, it signifies their strength. Now through the Predator's eyes, Dutch is bathed in red and shown to be weak and feeble. The original ending for Predator was never shot, but what was intended was for the Predator to win in combat, and before he delivers the final blow, relents and lets Dutch go free as a sign of respect. This, I think, only furthers the argument that there was no clear point of view as to who the Predator actually was. Instead, the Hollywood ending of monster destroyed, hero prevailed was used. The path Dutch and the Predator take seem to be very similar of one another. At the beginning of the film, Dutch states that his men are a rescue team and not assassins. Later, Dutch is furious over Dylan's betrayal and is hesitant to bring Anna as a hostage. Again, later in the film, Dutch tells Anna that the reason she wasn't killed was because she didn't have a weapon and there was no sport in it. Dutch and the creature both follow a strict guideline and operate within a certain code of conduct. I'm not saying that the Predator is necessarily considered a quote-unquote good guy. I mean, he's ripping spinal cords out of people and wearing skull necklaces. But all the similarities between Dutch and the creature blur the line between predator and prey. They both exhibit characteristics of a predator, so I believe that the term predator refers to each of them and the idea of what happens when two alpha predators come face to face. So there is no direct correlation between the term predator and the alien hunter antagonist. These are just my own thoughts and theories as to how similar both these characters are. I just hope to provide some perspective and give some insight to one of my favorite films. I'm James, and thanks for watching.